All right. Hey, folks. Just getting things going for this week's episode of The Leap. Super stoked about our guest today. And I've got a special little dog guest, so if you hear him stomping around, don't worry about it. So just get some folks here to trickle in. I'm going to get Daniel up on stage here, and then we will get it going. Give me 1 second. Let's see. There we
Hey,
go. Hey. Oh, how's it going?
I'm doing very well. I cannot complain. How are you?
I'm really well. I'm so happy to get to connect and chat today, and I'm really excited to honestly just share your story with folks. So thank you so much for joining
Uh,
us.
well, I appreciate that. And it was so good chatting with you on some call probably last year, talking about Mythos. It was such a pleasure to really connect with you, and I can't wait to talk to you today.
Yeah, awesome. So, folks are just trickling in. I'm just going to do a quick little intro, and then we'll get right into it. So, hey everybody, thanks so much for coming through. I'm Rachel. I'm the co-founder and CEO of Wethos, which is a platform that helps freelancers team up and form what we're calling virtual studios. So we make it really easy to price complex projects and then split payments. Every week, I interview a different creative entrepreneur about their journey to starting their own business. And this week's guest is Daniel, who's also a user of the platform, and super excited to chat because you are like a really crazily well-rounded entrepreneur. And I think some of the topics that we're going to dig into today are going to be really interesting for people. So just a quick little introduction on Daniel. So Daniel is the president of Entrepreneurs of Tomorrow, EOT, and he's also the founder of Work from Home Studio. EOT teaches at Promise Black and Brown students to solve problems through entrepreneurship, which I love, and innovation. And excitingly, they're launching their first campaign to reach 10,000 Black and Brown entrepreneurs by December 2023. So that is ambitious and amazing, and I love it. At Work from Home Studio, Daniel's got a roster of master creatives. They produce, art and art direct, different things like design projects, films, videos, and they've done tons of like global and national campaigns across a bunch of different countries, and have worked with brands, some of my favorites, like Spotify, Black Tag, Netflix, Playbill, you name it. So, Daniel, really, really stoked to dig in today. Would love to just hear from you quickly, like, how was your journey to sort of starting and launching a couple of these businesses, and how has it evolved over time?
Thanks for your question. I'm still trying to ask myself that same question. How did this happen?
Same. My parents too. My parents are like, "You're doing what now?"
Oh my God, I was like, really? Is this what's happening? This is what I got to wake up to? Or whether it be good news or bad news, right? Because,
Totally.
entrepreneurship is not for the faint of heart at all.
For sure.
But so I would, there's a couple of businesses I've started over the years. So I left my corporate career about 6 years ago. I used to be a senior HR business partner over at Amazon. And then I was a HR business partner running HR for 8 stores out in Hudson Valley, New York for Target. So I have a 9-year corporate career. And it's been really, really great to take a lot of those learnings, right? Because, a lot of people talk negatively about working for a company and literally I was paid to learn, right? And paid to learn
Totally.
by some of the best companies in the world, right? So I'm just so grateful that I got that opportunity to learn and test things out before I have to struggle and lose money myself. um, so what I'm doing now, there's been a couple of different things that I've done that brought me to this place. But I lead with Entrepreneurs of Tomorrow because at the beginning of the right before the pandemic in 2020, we were going to be launching, me and my co-founder, Jack Salomon, who I love Jack. He's just amazing. It's such a pleasure to work with him every single day. And we were going to launch a program for Entrepreneurs of Tomorrow in Trinidad and Tobago and New York. We were going to partner with Samsung experience there. And the pandemic happened. And we were like, oh, what are we going to do? Like, what should we, and I was nervous about losing money. I was nervous and about, the future of the project that I was starting, but then also like, what is life going to look like, as an entrepreneur? And so the response to that was to create something really cool with a lot of other entrepreneur friends, and we created this party called #WFH Party. And and we were like, okay, we can't do Entrepreneur Tomorrow yet, so let's do this party. So I reached out to a couple of friends, folks over at CCNYC, CultureCon, and there's a whole bunch of friends. Like I would just go down the list of people who supported, and I would just miss out on names. I don't want to do that, yeah. So we had a lot of support, and we created a viral party that went pretty viral, and it was supposed to be one party, and it ended up being 7 different reoccurring virtual shows on finance, on we had the Black Writers Room with New York Times bestsellers. We had Metropolitan Opera singers volunteering their time. It was just amazing, Rach. It was so amazing. And I was like, oh, this is fun. And that was what it was supposed to be. And then I was going to go back to my regularly scheduled program and move forward. But Samsung reached out and they said, hey, can you produce virtual programming for us? And then not only did Samsung reach out, it was Playbill.com. It was a nonprofit that was working with Disney. It was like so crazy. I was like, whoa, when I was asking for this business, where did this business come from?
Demand.
But it was coming. And then unfortunately, the death of George Floyd pushed way more business to us. An unfortunate situation, but it was a reckoning with America to say, like, hey, how do we support Black creatives? How do we support Black entrepreneurs? And I ended up benefiting from that unfortunate situation. But I'm just grateful to be here. I'm grateful for where we have grown. So from doing those virtual shows, I said, I actually have a business, and I'm making, a lot of money and paying people, and way more money than I've made in the past. And I said, okay, what are we going to do? Let me now go back to, I call myself an entrepreneur. Let me go back to basics and really develop a company, really figure out what is the mission and vision of the organization. I know we started a party to celebrate Black and brown creatives, and to raise grant money. But now we have a bigger responsibility. Now we're getting bigger checks from brands. Like, how do I distribute and spread this wealth amongst my people? And it has worked out so well, because I was able to attract a team that was volunteering before, right? I would never be able to attract this team without, the situation I was going through. People were working for GQ magazine, people were working and writing for Forbes, and people were doing huge stuff, and they were just doing things for us from a volunteer perspective. And now that I had the budget, I said, hey, do you want to do this project with me? And I ended up kind of building a rock star team that I don't know how it would have recruited otherwise. And we started doing like a lot of cool stuff, and then fast forward, to now, not Entrepreneurs Tomorrow, WFH Studio, we only specifically work on projects that, shines light on any sort of cause, whether it be environmental or racial justice or social justice, or any sort of cause that help move the world positively forward. And so to be able to pick those kind of, pick who I want to work with for the most part, and whether it be brands or other artists, has been such a great blessing that I know a lot of my peers don't really get the opportunity to do. And I'm glad that I had the opportunity to, do the work that I'm doing. And, with WFH Studio, you asked me for one simple story, but I'm so excited about this. With WFH Studio, it really set the stage for us to launch Entrepreneurs of Tomorrow. And that's literally my passion. And to be able to work with Black and brown students all over the country. We had one international student, which was amazing. And then we're going to have more of those, So we started off with 4 students, and now we are at 10 entrepreneurs. They have grossed over 100K in their businesses. And the oldest one just turned 18, right? So they're super young, excited.
Yes, I love that.
My students, who are mostly female, have been offered over $1 million of college scholarships, and it's just been amazing. Like, this one thing that we did, how much impact it has brought to students. And now we said, you know what, let's keep on going. Why don't we just do 10,000? So we're reaching out to a lot of brands, and I'll probably reach out to you, Wethos, to see how can we really set the stage up for these young people to be successful.
Yeah, oh my gosh, I love that. And it's such an interesting story because I also just hear kind of through all of that, there's a through line really around relationships and building relationships and really um being community oriented in both ways, which is not just asking from your community, but also then giving to the community and bringing jobs to that community. And so I'd love to start by digging in a little bit with you have several different businesses. A lot of them have that through line just around managing and really growing relationships and your network. How does that um, how does that relate to your day to day? So, like, can you give us a little bit of insight into building the community network, but also how you think about like managing those relationships and keeping them top of mind for folks as you're going along? Because I know that is something that people have a hard time with, which is not just building the network, but then actually like maintaining it and really, deepening those relationships. How do you approach that?
Yeah, I mean, I think I'm 37 now, so in a couple of years I'll be 40, and I've learned a lot. I would say that, and just for me being an entrepreneur, and really wanted to do everything myself, and really wanted me to have the best ideas. I had to quickly learn that was just not the way to go, and I had to learn how much I didn't know. And once I have that mindset, you know, you're way more open to listening, way more open to really understanding who others' strengths are, what other strengths, what other strengths people have. And when I realized that, that has made collaborating, that has made networking way more easy, because now I clearly knew what tools I didn't have, and it's a clear delineation between, like what I thought I knew, and then kind of bridging the gap to who are the persons that are going to help me with that. What kind of influence that I need to have around me? What do I need to be listening to? So I think networking is beyond just kind of meeting with humans. It's like literally kind of what environment that you curate, whether with the podcast that you listen to, who you go to dinner with, who you date, honestly, right? All of those things have everything to do with the community that you build.
Yeah, for sure. And I think it's really interesting because I totally feel that way about like I always joke, I'm like I've slowly over time been able to like fire myself from all the jobs that that you do when you're starting to get a business off the ground, and then hire the experts to really be able to come in and just do something 10 times better than you could ever do. And I think one of the biggest challenges about that is what you identified, which is your unknown unknowns. Like I don't know what I don't know, right? And so as you're kind of going along, you're starting to figure out like, oh, I didn't realize that it could be like this, or I didn't know that that was even a thing, maybe. And I just have so many of those aha moments in the day to day. And I think like that's such an important thing, that switching that mindset's really tough, right? To go from like, it'll be faster if I just do it all myself, which is usually true, to putting the time and the effort in to really be able to like recruit and then delegate and then help those people succeed, really. And to me, I've found that like as much as I love executing, that piece is so much more fulfilling actually,
It,
than just doing it
it's
myself.
so fulfilling. Not only fulfilling though, it just makes sense and you have better results. So for example, when I
Totally.
let go of Entrepreneurs Tomorrow, I didn't fully let go. I have a vision. I wanted it to be the Nike. I want it to be, and it's going to be the Nike of all nonprofits, right? I want it to be a cool brand, all that sort of thing, right?
Love that.
But when I let go, that's when I actually grew. I
Mm.
developed the board. Like the board that we have is just phenomenal, and everyone that I love. I love James Cole Jr. He's the chairman of our board. Darnell Elmore, VP of Inclusion Strategy at Netflix, on the board. Jess Furman, SVP of Music, licensing sync over at Big Noise. Steve Furman, CEO of Curry. I would never be able, and Lyle Freeze, he's the executive director of a nonprofit in New York, but I would never be able to do what we're doing without really smart people and letting go and letting them do their thing.
Yeah, I totally agree. So I'm curious, something that I hear a lot from our community is there are a lot of people who have maybe like multiple businesses or even multiple revenue streams, and they're kind of trying to manage these different things, whether that's products or services. Some people also have kind of a nonprofit type of arms, or like you're talking about. Can you just help us understand a little bit more, like what does your actual day to day look like? Like how do you think about like prioritizing your time across these different initiatives? Any advice for folks who may be managing a couple of different things?
Yeah, I think it's a constant journey for me in terms of day to day. So I'm now doing a lot of biohacking. So it's like, okay, what does my health look like? What does my sleep look like? How do I control my thoughts?
Mm.
So part of my routine is one, I therapy every week. Bonnie, love her. Yeah, so she's definitely supports me, and it really teaches me like most of my thoughts are not real. You know?
Wow, the new tagline for therapy, honestly.
Oh my gosh. And I start there, right? Because once I realized most of our thoughts, just how the brain works, right? Once I started studying the brain a little bit more, most of our thoughts are not real. So I used to basically, my thoughts used to rule everything that I did. So
Yeah.
that goes to the routine that you were talking about, right? So once I was able to really get better at that, and I'm still a work in progress of like how to think, and you know, then that changed my meditation practice. So that's how I normally start my mornings. So it's exercise, meditation. It is gratefulness. It is intentions for the day. It is my morning walks. It is my reading, and then my podcast. I do
Mm.
all of those things before I open up an email.
Well,
Because
I
if
am.
I don't really manage myself, or if I don't pour into myself, I'm not going to be really good for other people. And what I'm doing now, like at the beginning of the year, I said I was going to decrease 50% of my workload, which has worked and is more expensive to do so because you have to hire people to do that. But um, but that was part of the reason I was going to reduce 50% of my workload so that I could fill the rest up with self-development. Because where I want to go and the success that I want to have is going to take a lot of self-development, is going to take a lot of practice.
Mm.
So that's what I'm doing. I'm doing a lot of like speech classes. I'm doing a lot of reading when it comes to like finance. I'm doing a lot of leadership training, and I've been heavily recruited lately for like some C-suite high-level executive position. Let's see where that takes me. Is pretty exciting. But I think all of that stuff helped me get to the level of getting that sort of interest in the world.
Yeah, totally. And I think that having that kind of North Star is super important. Like I actually have a North Star for this year, which was just be a better manager.
Mm,
Um, and like that requires to be a better human, honestly, right? Like you're describing. So I think that so much of that came down to, just a lot of the things that I worked on were like unwinding a lot of my own, preconceived notions and things, reframing stuff for myself that, helps me get motivated more, like just all this different sort of looking inward first, right? And I think that that is a super important step for folks to help them focus their time more effectively too, because I do my morning routine is a little less intensive, but it does involve a podcast and a puzzle. So
amazing. That's amazing. That's amazing.
that just helps my brain like warm up. And it puts me in like a good mindset sort of to start my day. And I also have like boundaries and things with emails. Like I don't really answer emails on Mondays because that's my email inbox is not my priority list. It's other people's priorities.
Right.
So I have to like make sure that, you create those boundaries. And so I think like creating space for that and really talking through how much self-development it does take to become a great, leader is super important. And when you actually, obtain that level of success that you're looking for, you'll be able to like handle it as a normal human and not turn into like a monster, which I think also is something that happens when people get very successful and they haven't
Yeah.
like worked on themselves.
And I love that you said that, because we have to be honest, right? Most entrepreneurs are lions, right? You wouldn't be able to survive this if
Yeah.
you weren't.
Yeah. Like a little unhinged, just a little.
Yeah, so but lions have a very specific personality. We have a very specific temperament. We have a very specific drive. And understanding that is super, super important. And, part of why I meditate so much, part of why I make sure that like I'm in the car right now because we're celebrating my sister's birthday, right? We finished and we're having this conversation, but prioritizing all those different things, because if I don't, I would turn out to be a very rich, terrible person.
Yeah, totally, totally. I'm like that. That is like the thought that kind of haunts me, Joe, like every day, kind of. I'm like, when I get to that point, I don't want to be a monster, and that is like a huge motivator. Um, so in building the businesses, to speaking of, mental health and like tough lessons, I was just curious to hear from you if there was a lesson maybe that you like learned the hard way, that maybe other entrepreneurs can take something away from that in building your business, and whether that is like avoiding the pitfall or maybe learning the lesson not the hard way, I guess. Anything come to mind for you when it comes to, you know, the journey to building?
Well, there's tons, but
You like pulls out a scroll. I'm like,
like, okay, which one to pick out of that, right? But what would I say is like one big aha lesson that I learned? I think it's interesting. So it is allowing people to be,
hmm.
and that is in different ways, right? So allowing people to be themselves personally, allowing people, giving them the opportunity to succeed. Um, and that was so hard for me because there's a certain quality level that I expect of myself. And because I expected myself, I expected of others, right? And what I had to learn is that the expectation that I create for myself, that doesn't necessarily have to be the expectation that I place on others in a very nuanced way. Of course, you have to have high standards, but you also have to leave room for people to meet those standards. And I don't think I was doing that well enough, or I was patient enough. And I think some of the patient, like some of it, I shouldn't have been patient because it would have cost me way more money than it did. But knowing that, what I realized is that it's, you know, the investment in a company is not only to get the thing done, it's also in your people. So I know that I'm going to have unproductive hours, and those unproductive hours translate into way more quality work in 6 months than I would have gotten in 2 months. So if I'm more patient and allowing people to grow themselves, I actually benefit way more. So that was one lesson that I learned the hard way because, you know, I lost a lot of money doing the opposite.
Yeah, oh my God. Yeah, and it's such a good call out because patience is so underrated. And being an entrepreneur is like this constant struggle between, you know, like urgency and patience, right? Because in a business, you want to create the urgency, but also you have to have the patience for people. You have to have the patience for also like that longer term vision and all the things that need to happen in order to get there. And I think that that is such a unique framing of it. And what you said about, you know, letting people be and then giving them the space to grow, and to not immediately like give up on somebody the second that maybe it's not quite right, or putting in the work to do that, because that's definitely a lesson that I've learned too, which is like, yeah, as a business you want outcomes, but like relationships drive outcomes. And that didn't click for me for a very long time until like probably, I don't know, a year ago, I would say. You cannot have the outcomes without the relationships, and it's building those relationships and building that trust that really helps you drive the outcome that you're looking for. So I think that such a unique takeaway for folks. um, so I want to just get a little tactical for a second, because um, when it comes to building a business, growing the business, especially when it comes to services, there is a big kind of cloud, I guess, over, you know, how do we price? How do we charge? And the reason why I ask this question is because it's very unique to service-based businesses. In no other kind of business, right, are you in the dark totally guessing, like, I don't know how much to sell my books for. Like, we all know how much books cost. So I was curious to hear from you. You know, pricing projects with multiple people involved is particularly challenging. How do you think about what you charge, how you charge? How has that sort of strategy evolved over time as you've grown? And yeah, like, are there any things that you have learned about tracking either profitability or figuring out what the right price point is for your business that has helped in that regard?
Well, thanks for asking that. I think this is a conversation you and I have had in regards to like pricing and the tools. And yeah, there's a lot of lessons. I would say predominantly Black and brown people charge less. And it is anxiety because we're worried about getting the job.
Yeah.
And what I learned about that is, okay, so I used to work for big brands, so I know how much things cost. And then
Yeah.
the other side of it, me asking for those things were a problem. I was so surprised. And that's why I say it's very beneficial to work for a brand because you understand the data, right? You understand a lot more.
For sure.
And a lot of that stuff I know that it was race driven. The reason why, because some of those same people that said no, or they said yes and lowballed us and we walked away, asked us to come back after George Floyd died. And I just felt it was so interesting, right? And I'm not a person that screams race or anything like that, right? But
The world screams it, unfortunately. You have to deal with it. So
it's the thing, and it was just unfortunate. So that was one thing that I learned, and the power of talking to other creatives so that you could get a really good understanding of what people are charging is super, super important as well. And then also outside of that, though, the mind. So that's where I started, and I started. Okay, boom. Now we're leveled. Now we compare based on experience, based on gravitas of the brand, based on all this. There's a lot to consider in terms of pricing. Now I'm at that base level of where I probably should be to be able to run this properly, right? Because we were taking on pricing things low and not able to do it because
yeah.
you need way more talent. You need way more hours or revisions or whatever that needs to be.
Yeah, like barely scraping by, like super thin kind of margin, if anything. Yeah, I've been there too, for sure.
Exactly. So that's where I was, and I think that's probably good advice for people who are starting out. But now that we actually have a brand, that we actually have a portfolio, the conversation is different, right? Because now we can value it based on exclusivity. We can value it based on brand and et cetera, et cetera. So a lot of the master creatives that work with Entrepreneurs of Tomorrow and also, WFH Studio, they are also art influencers, right? So that has another sort of impact when it comes to pricing. So I think it's more so really understanding the market. If you're not doing research, if you're not asking those questions, if you're not booking gigs just to see how much it costs another competitor, you're really behind, right? Because the answers are there for you, and you just want to make sure that you're sticking to your guns in that way and having that confidence.
Yeah, and I'm glad that you brought this up because I tell this story a lot from my days when we were, freelancing, and I used to work at big agencies in New York. Same thing. My co-founder Claire was on the account side, so she was seeing like how much we were charging clients and then how much we were all getting paid, and not great. And so when we left and we started our own studio, at one point I remember I pitched a proposal against one of my old agencies, and my proposal I put in came in at $50K, and their proposal came in at $500K for the exact same thing, the exact same type of project, right? And might I remind everyone that like a service-based business is about people. All an agency has to hang its hat on is its people, right? Those are the people delivering the services. I worked at that agency, and they're charging 10x or whatever that we were putting forward, but we had the network of the exact same people because everybody is sharing networks essentially. And so I lost that project, and I lost it because I found out later through the back channels that the price point felt to the brand too good to be true. And I learned a lesson that day about money and about psychology, and especially about this business, which is really like perception is reality. And I think that when people think about pricing, they are very much worried about, not getting that project. And that's a real thing, like because of the race to the bottom that the, economy has created. If you won't do it for $5, I'll find somebody who will, is sort of where we're at right now. And so of course people innately have that fear. But at the end of the day, when you get into some of these bigger brands, actually these alarm bells start to go off if the price point is too low, because they are used to hiring big agencies and paying in budget lines millions and millions of dollars, and they see that low price point and they're like, something doesn't pass the sniff test. So I think it's super important to call that out, because for the folks who don't come from that background or don't have that visibility, right? Charging $10,000 for like a rebrand or something seems like crazy, like for a logo, like really? But it's like, if you go to an agency, they're going to charge you $100,000 for that rebrand. So like, there's a really, really wide range, and it can be really challenging for folks. And I do also want to call out what you said about, sharing rates with each other, because to me, like, this is about collective action, right? Like clients can't go around saying like, I'll find somebody who'll do it for $5 if we all can collectively say like, no, this is not, the floor is here, it's not here.
Right.
So like that is such a huge thing, and it does tie so closely into just I think like the culture, particularly in America, around employees and salaries and not sharing information, and keeping that sort of shrouded in mystery because the clients have more power that way. So I feel like I appreciate you sharing that, because I think it's probably helpful for a lot of folks to hear. And I'm sorry that, yeah, go ahead.
You're absolutely right. So when one of my master creators like made six figures, and I was like, that was the happiest day of my life, and they made six figures, and after that there were so many no's after that because they knew what their value was.
Yeah,
and the
yeah.
no's actually got them way more money, right? Because like you make sure that you hold people accountable for respecting where you're at. And unfortunately, it's no shade. It's like we just can't work together,
Yeah, not a good fit at this time.
So someone that's gonna take that job, and we're very happy for them,
Yeah, and saying no is such an amazing inflection point of growth in a weird way, right, for this kind of business. And I do definitely find psychologically that when you do start to turn things down, people come back and they're like, wait, whoa, hey, maybe I found some money suddenly, and you're like, oh, okay, interesting. But yeah, I think that there is like a bit of a shift there in mindset, and you don't know if you don't try. My mom always said, like, if you put out a number and they take the first thing you said without any pushback or negotiation, like, you left money on the table, you charged too little. So just wrapping up here, and I want to kind of get a sense for these two last questions here. First is there any advice for folks who are looking to take the leap, start their own freelance business, keeping in mind, of course, that, I mean, really, this has been happening for the last 2 years, up and down, but a lot of people, I think, right now are going through layoffs. Maybe they're not going freelance by choice. My girlfriend actually just went through that. But hey, she's already got some projects lined up, and she's ready to roll. So any advice for folks who are looking to take the leap into starting their freelance business, or maybe found themselves there, maybe not by choice?
Yeah, I mean, so that's very good, because it just depends on life, right, and what actually happens, and what are the cards you're dealt. So let's say the example of someone that is working, that wants to take a leap. Make sure the business is right. Like I would love to give you an inspirational speech about follow your dreams and you don't need to work for anyone and all that. We are in a recession.
Amen.
No matter what I'm saying, like, that's what's happening, right? Or about to be, or whatever it is, right? And it's very important to have cash flow. And if you do not have cash flow, you're already behind. So whatever it is, whether it be a job, whether it be, make sure that you have cash flow to be able to survive, because it's going to be very hard for you to grow anything when you're struggling. So that's one piece of business that I've been through, because I've quit without having anything lined up, and it was just the hardest thing to do. And I made it on the other side, but there's so many things I didn't have to experience, that if I was smarter with cash flow, or not being overconfident in my ability to turn a profit in less than a year.
I have the same problem. I was like, 6 months, I can do it. No.
And I think my confidence actually helps me, but then sometimes, and a lot of times, it doesn't, right? So,
there's a fine line between like optimism and delusion, I think.
So that's what I think. Make sure the business is right, the cash flow is right. Having a job is not a bad word. Having a bad job is a bad word, and make sure that you're set up you're set up for success, not you feel like you're behind and you're trying to catch up with your own business, which is very difficult, because the statistics, we all know the statistics of how many businesses last. So if you're starting a business already behind, that's even worse of a statistic.
Yeah, for sure. And I think when it comes to making sure the business works, that's such an important piece of advice that we don't say enough, because even just going back to your story of how your business got started, the demand was there. Like it came whether you were ready for it or not. Suddenly, like, whoa, there's demand for this. We made something and it's clicking in the market, and there's a lot of people who are interested and want to do it. And so when you start to see that, and when you kind of find that sweet spot, that is such an unlock moment. It's like a really an aha moment, I think, for anyone's business. And I think not enough people spend time on the economics really of that and really understanding, like, is there demand for what I'm wanting to build or start a business around before they go ahead and take that leap. They just assume this is a genius idea and people want it.
The greatest
I've also done that.
The greatest entrepreneur I know, who's a mentor of mine, literally tests everything. And this is how I shift my mindset, right? It's not a fact that I didn't want to take the leap. It was more about the strategy of how I'm taking that leap.
Yeah.
And why am I taking that leap? And what am I taking that leap for? It's like going into a relationship with someone that you literally been on one date with, and you're saying, we're going to get married. Like, doesn't make sense. It literally doesn't make sense at all, right? Or it could, but my opinion is that it hasn't.
If you're lucky, if you're really lucky.
Hasn't worked for me. So it's like that, right? Because, you know, it's such an emotional process to start and birth something, right? Yeah. So if you're trying to birth something and have no customers and you don't even know if you have a customer, that's just not a good idea.
Yeah. You're making that for you, right? You're making that for you, not for
exactly
demand in the market.
Just make it for yourself, and people are going to come over and enjoy that product. Don't turn it into a business if you don't have a customer, right? So
yeah, I think that's super, super important. Okay, so if folks want to find you, follow along, keep an eye out for anything that's launching, where's the best place for them to do that?
Daniel P. Calderon on Instagram. You can follow. You can reach all of the other brands there. We have #WFH, and we have EO Tomorrow for Entrepreneurs of Tomorrow. But we have a lot of exciting things coming up. I'm really happy about our gala. We're going to be reimagining what a gala is like on November 29th. So we're excited about that, and we're trying to raise $250,000 on that gala. So wish us the best of luck because we have a lot of students to help.
Yeah, awesome. And then anything else that folks should just keep their eyes out for that's going to be coming up this year that you guys are rolling out beyond that?
Yeah, so Fred Sands, a master creator that works for WFH Studio, we led a campaign for Puma. So we're excited about that. I think that's going to be dropping in September. So look out for the Instagram for that information. And there's tons of, like, we have things coming out on the AMC. I'm not really sure when it's coming out. It's interesting, right? We work on all these projects, and sometimes it's like a year ago, and then we start seeing it like a year and a half or 6 months later, like, oh, we did that, you know? So it's going to be a couple of those that come by surprise that didn't get released yet. But we're really excited about the work that we're doing with students. We're really excited about the work that we're doing with creatives. And then we just we're going to be launching a partnership with Authoritative, and we're going to be developing text-based, SMS-based trainings.
Cool.
So creators, because it's more about, like, how do we give access to this information to allow people to be their best selves and be their best entrepreneur.
Yeah, and I love that too, because mobile is so much more accessible to such a wider range of people. Actually, a lot of people solely access the internet on their phone. They don't even have a laptop. Yeah, so I love that. That's brilliant.
Yeah, it's gonna be like really cool if you're texting and there's like text prompts and you're texting it back and you're getting responses. So I was like, wow, this is a really cool way to learn.
Cool. Amazing. Well, Daniel, it was such a pleasure as always. Thank you so much for joining us. And if folks want to follow along, you can head over to Daniel's page to keep an eye out for what's going on. And I'm just super excited to see how everything evolves, and definitely hit me up because I would love to see how we can support any of those initiatives, particularly the EOT, I think is super interesting. And I've already got a few things going on in the back of my brain that maybe could drive some more students your way. So thank you so much. I really appreciate the time.
Thank you. And lastly, so I ran out of the restaurant because I was celebrating my sister's birthday. I just want to wish her a very happy birthday.
Yes.
My favorite woman in the world.
Happy birthday. What's her name?
Vashti.
Vashti. Happy birthday, Vashti. That's a great way to wrap this, to be honest. I'll let you get back to it. Thanks, folks, for joining us. We'll be back in 2 weeks with another guest on The Leap. So join us then. And everyone, have a great night.
All right. Thank you so much.
See y'all later.